Hello, my name is John Fernandez. I'm thrilled to be with you this afternoon. I have 2 points to make today. The first is that I want to emphasize, I want to convince you that there's an inflection point that we are all living through, a global inflection point and an institutional inflection point. Second point I want to make to you is that I'd like to convince you that cities have a critical role in understanding where we are and moving forward in a positive way. So in putting together this talk, Cities of a New Future, I wanted to focus on a new future. And that new future is climate change. It's something that we are contending with. It's something that is, for me, now very much an accepted part of our future. It's our new future. And what I'd like to emphasize is that cities have a pivotal role in that new future. So the question then comes to mind, why this inflection point now? Why have we politically, and maybe as a society, individually, come to accept that there is a large-scale change in our Earth systems and that it has consequences for us as a civilization? Because the climate has changed very significantly in the past. In fact, the Earth has been covered in ice and snow. This species, our species, has lived through ice ages in the past. And so why now? And so what's important about now is that we are now 7 billion plus strong. And I'm borrowing a video from the International Space Station to make this point. Not only can we boast of having extended our species to every corner of the globe, but we've done so very, very exquisitely attuned to our climate, to the climate that has allowed us to build our civilization. And that phrase, exquisitely attuned, is borrowed from MIT professor Kerry Emanuel. So our cities, our infrastructure, power systems, agricultural, logistical networks, supply chains are based on this very stable climate. But for most of the history of our species, most of us lived in rural or agricultural settings. So one of the pieces of this inflection point to keep in mind is that we are now substantially an urban species. And that urban species, hundreds of millions of us, live on the coast, very much dependent with transportational networks, and again, quite dependent on, but also quite vulnerable to changes in the climate. And so Arctic ice melting, ocean thermal expansion may have potentially catastrophic effects for human settlements, not just cities, but also rural and smaller settlements like villages. So a place like Bangladesh is looking at a very sober future. And so that's why relatively small changes in temperature across the globe really matter, that we have attuned ourselves to a relatively stable environment. So this is an image of a part of the island of Manhattan back in about the 1600s. And this image is somewhere midtown, tells you, very clearly, is this wilderness area, natural systems. That same place, circa 1960s. This is an image of that place, Midtown Manhattan. And to give you a sense of the rate of our expansion of cities and how cities play a critical role, is in 300 years, that city built a place for 8 million inhabitants. This is an image from a fishing village in southeast China. China has been mentioned several times today. In the mid-1980s, population of approximately 20,000. This is that same village today. This is the city of Shenzhen. And so 1 order of magnitude less than New York City and 2 million more people. So the rate of urban expansion is completely unprecedented. And in 2008, we crossed the threshold where more people now live in cities than live in non-city areas, in agricultural and rural areas. And the future is challenging, and in the challenge lies the opportunity. So in the next 30 to 40 years, we will be doubling the urban population, but very important to realize that that doubling in the urban population, 90% of it's going to happen in developing regions. So there is a link between mitigating and adapting to climate change and development. And therefore, also in the first presentation of this series, Amos showed you the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. So those goals are just as important as the recent agreement in Paris, the COP21 agreement. So cities today, the frenetic, energy-intensive cities of today, account for 2/3 of global energy consumption, 3/4 carbon emissions, and between 2005 and 2050, urban energy is going to triple, as well as the land area, the extent of cities. So in my group, in the Urban Metabolism group at MIT, I'm an architect. I'm here to represent partly the building technology program, the Department of Architecture. There's architecture at MIT too. In my group, what we do is we account for the resource intensity of cities. And we did not know 5 years ago that there was such an enormous range of resource intensity in cities today, in contemporary cities. So for example, in developing regions, in cities in developing regions, per capita consumption is on the order of, say, 5 tons per capita of all material and energy. If you put it into a basket per capita per year and you weight it, 5 tons per capita. In transition economies, cities in transition economies, cities in countries in the Mediterranean and Eastern Europe and other places in the world, it's upwards of 10 to 30 tons per capita. And the image, the bottom image there of Singapore in cities in fully developed countries, in wealthy regions of the world, it's upwards of 30 to 100 plus. And we suspect that Singapore's 120, 150 tons per capita. So there's an enormous range, and therefore the sustainability or the resource efficiency pathways for our urban world will require us to look at multiple pathways. The pathways that are both technologically but also socially and developmentally appropriate for those cities in those regions. Part of the way to do this is to, here at MIT, to understand the appropriate suite of technologies and then to deploy and develop whatever science and engineering is necessary to bring those technologies to bear in a cost-effective way. So for example, for different cities in different parts of the world, for cities that are very dense and very energy intensive, very greenhouse gas intensive, greenhouse gas intensity of electricity, for these sorts of cities, then maybe importing renewable electricity is important to decarbonize the fuel mix, and also district energy because you have very dense settlements in that city, very dense districts, and then you can provide decentralized resources to those cities. So that's part of the work of my group, is to develop pathways towards future humane and energy efficient cities. I want to say one last word about my role. I'm the director of the Environmental Solutions Initiative. And the other inflection point I want to mention, where we are now as MIT is committed to making a real impact using the decades of work that MIT researchers have been doing and having a greater, deeper impact in the world. Some of my colleagues here in Earth, Atmospheric and Planetary Sciences and other departments. And so the last slide I want to just emphasize that part of the work that I do, as well as many others here at MIT, on understanding climate change and then doing something about it, is not a doom and gloom vision. It's about what are the best pathways towards a more humane and more sustainable future. Thank you.